Welcome to the official Hacks podcast from Max and Pineapple Street Studios. I'm Bobby Finger, writer and co-host of the pop culture podcast Who Weekly.
And I'm Lindsey Weber, writer and fellow co-host of Who Weekly. And we're taking over as the host of the official Hacks podcast, unpacking every episode of Hacks Season 4. We're huge fans of the show, and we're honored to take over hosting duties from Hacks creators Paul W. Downs, Lucia Aniello, and Jen Statsky.
But don't worry, they're not going away. They'll be joining us today to talk about the first 2 episodes of the new season. Then later on, we'll sit down with Samantha Riley, Hacks writer of episode 2.
Now, dear listener, this is your official spoiler warning. If you haven't watched these episodes yet, go back and watch them right now.
Right now.
Right now. Go watch the episodes.
You're a public figure now.
No, I've been telling her that she's new to it.
You're new to it too. This is a bigger stage than you've ever been on. You're not in Vegas anymore.
Okay, so those of you who might be unfamiliar with us, we are the hosts of a podcast called Who Weekly. One of our driving forces is discussing the difference and similarities between celebrities that we call Who's and then ones we call Them's. Bobby, will you explain the difference?
Yes, I think I've done this enough over the past 10 years to have it down pretty well. Who's are celebrities who you see and say, who is that? Who? Very easy. Them's are the celebrities that you see and go, oh, them,
Oh,
you know?
them. We always like to say it's like you're perusing the magazines at checkout, which used to be all tabloids, now are kind of like Cooking Light or whatever. But you're seeing a face on the cover. You're going, I don't know who that is. How are they on the cover of a magazine? That is exactly what our show is all about. Bobby, my question for you is, Hacks is kind of about a pseudo real life present day moment with some fake celebrities in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is Deborah a who or a them?
You know, I would have answered firmly them until this season, but I think the conversation with Winnie, the Helen Hunt character, made it very clear that she's a them, but there's an interesting sort of wrinkle to the themdom where it's like you are a them to so many populations in this country, but you're not a them to the market that matters to Helen Hunt.
True. I mean, I think there's the idea that she's not a surefire hit for Tonight Show. She's not like a slam dunk, everybody in the world is going to watch this and know who you are. Gives a little bit of questioning to the themdom. I do think that she is a them. Enough people know who she is, and that's all that you need.
And also what you have in this season is Ava, who was just a working writer through the bulk of her career, is now dealing with a level of fame by being a high-profile head writer for Deborah Vance, and also on the cover of New York Times Magazine. She's having to contend with her own fame level rising. I think she's not a who, though. I think she's firmly, we have a third category, the nah, the person that's not quite there. Where do you think she is?
She could have a little viral moment. She could have a breakout moment. She's, she is going to be on the covers of magazines talking about the show.
And she dated an actor.
Oh, yeah.
She dated a famous actor in the first 2 seasons.
She sure did. She's someone we would cover on the podcast for
Right.
sure.
Someone would call in about, on our podcast, we have a call-in show on Fridays. Someone would definitely say, who's that bisexual girlie on the cover of New York Times Magazine with Deborah Vance, my mom's favorite comedian? And we'd say, oh, that's her head writer, Ava, who used to date the star of Wolf Girl. And now we'd like to welcome to the podcast Hacks creators and your former podcast hosts, Paul, Lucia, and Jen. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for having
Thanks
us
for giving us your
on.
job.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we so appreciate you giving us your job.
Welcome.
That
Giving,
is so great.
our
for
job
us.
was stolen. Let's be honest. We stole our job because you're better, and that's okay.
We will try to do it better than you, honestly, as watchers of the show.
This is like meeting your ex's hotter, better partner that they moved on from you to.
Wouldn't know, but sounds bad.
So, congratulations on the show's success. I feel very the town right now. Like, you won a lot of Emmys. Congrats.
Thank you.
So, we're here. We're taking over your job. Do you have any advice for us as the new hosts of the Hacks podcast? Like, what should we be doing? What's
Don't
the
be
advice
yourself. I'll tell you that. Don't be yourself.
I feel like every episode I cried for some. Is that true? I feel like I
No
did
memory
that. So
of
just try
no
not to
memory
cry.
of last week, much less.
You
the
did,
podcast.
yeah. You got it. You got emotional a few times.
I feel like I'm constantly crying on the pod, which is so actually random if you know me at all. So you know why? It's because we record these at the very, very end of like making the show, of like the end of a season, because we're still in post. So I'm so exhausted that when I come on the pod, I'm just like, just crying.
Yeah. I think
So
I
you're
like-
saying that we should run ourselves ragged before we tape the pod?
That's
Oh
right.
yeah, you
Yes.
should do like emotional, like and physical torture to yourself.
I'll schedule my therapist pre-pod
Yeah.
taping so that I'm all worked up
There
you go.
when talking about hacks.
You should stay
Dump
up
your
for-
therapist. This is therapy. You know, you can just talk
Yeah,
about how
stop
you
going
feel.
to therapy. Stay up for 2 weeks before, no sleep.
Is there anything you want to say to Barbara Streisand at the moment?
Oh, that's right.
Oh my
Hello,
God.
Barbara.
Hi, Barbara. I think you have the wrong address for us because we have not gotten any of your letters.
Ugh, but I've been getting the DMs, and I need you to stop. I'm not going to accept the request. I can't. I cannot.
I hope she's still listening. Maybe when she hears there's new host, she's like, I'm out.
No. She's a ride or die. She'll be here forever, and we
She's an-
appreciate that.
She's on the Reddit.
So let's get started with episode 1. It's called Big Brave Girl. It was written by Jen Statsky, Lucia Aniello, and Paul W. Downs, and it's directed by Lucia.
Well, aren't you a big, brave girl? I guess I am. It's for the best. We'll see.
People have been waiting with bated breath ever since Ava said, "I got your ass" to Deborah.
That's a quote. That's what she said.
And now we're back. Now we're back, and it started right where we left off in episode 1. So let's get started with episode 1 of season 4. My first question is, did you shoot in order? I don't necessarily care about this sort of thing all the time, but did you shoot this first? Like, was there a compulsion to like start off right where you ended to maintain a sense of, I don't know, tone, urgency?
Wouldn't that have been amazing?
That would be really good. We should have done that.
No.
It's so funny. You know, it's hard in production to do anything in any kind of order that's not production friendly.
To prioritize creativity in production is very rare.
Yes.
Yeah.
So no, we did not shoot it first,
No.
but we shot it in
Maybe
early because it was
it was in December, maybe.
yeah. So it was like, you know, the first or second block.
I mean, I guess what I'm interested in too is like this whole show is literally the dynamic between these two women. Do they hate each other? Do they love each other? Is it something in between? Are we loving verging on hate? Are we hating verging on love? It's like you're kind of creating this spectrum and I feel like you always have to remind the viewer where we are on the spectrum, but we can't stay too long in one space or else it gets kind of stale. Like, how did you know going into this season, let's start them off at the nastiest we've ever seen them, and then we
DEFCON 1.
have to like taper off kind of in a certain pacing? Like, how does that work in the room?
That's a big discussion.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we're constantly having discussions about walking that tonal tightrope of how mean can they be, how intense should this be, how dramatic should this be, but also what is funny to watch and what is and so we just kind of always use story and character, I think, to guide us in terms of what feels the most real. And so, for instance, starting this episode, we were like, there's so much tension between them, and that moment was so intense. There's no way to skip ahead 3 days and bypass that. Like, we knew it had to start at that place with them.
And it's the most delicious place too, because, you know, sometimes we talk about like how some people just want Deborah and Ava to be friends and for it to be more of a hangout show. And in so many ways, we like would love to give people that, but it's really hard to make story without tension. And so for us, first of all, what was it? I got your ass. That was the quote, right?
Mhm.
The I got
That was
your
a quote.
ass. After that, I mean, that's also that's like so sorry to even evoke a GUN, but that's like loading the gun with so much that like you don't want to like not explore all of it. So that extreme tension is actually so fun for us to write towards because, you know, it's like, well, is she going to try to get her fired? Is she going to try to physically murder her? Or is she going to like, what is she going to try to choke her? So that's like actually so fun for us to pitch on and to be like, well, what could happen? What could happen? And for us, that first episode really is Deborah being like, I'm going to get rid of this girl and try a million different ways to like step on Ava's fingers as she's, you know, hanging on the mountain. Well, I guess she's not hanging on the mountain, but like to try to push her off the mountain. But Ava's basically saying, I'm not going anywhere, bitch. And that's another quote. And so that's really fun for us.
And you know, if you think back to even the pilot, it's really juicy when they clap back at each other. You know, it's like some of the most fun stuff to write because it's also, as much as this is a very intense dynamic for them, and it's even more intense than it's ever been, it's also their love language. You know, ribbing each
Right.
other, making fun of each other, challenging each other is part of the joy of the show. And so we get to do that, I think, to the 100th degree this year.
And it's funny because the anger, the DEFCON 1 of it all in this episode, they're angrier than they've ever been at each other, but somehow the anger on Deborah's side manifests in something really silly, pranks.
Mm-hmm.
So it manifests in a joke, but they're the nastiest sorts of things that you can't even really do unless you know the person so well. So even the nastiness is a manifestation of her love for her. Like you can't get Ava in the way that she gets Ava in this episode without really knowing her.
Right. And you can't give someone's underwear to the boss unless you've had the relationship where you two were living together. And you know what I mean? Like that is a manifestation of how entwined in each other's lives they've become. And yeah, Deborah is both. It's what Jimmy says in the beginning when he's like, she's been doing this for 50 years. So she's really good at these types of maneuvers and also really knows Ava better than anyone in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think also like pranks being such a Hollywood story, it's like the George Clooney of it all. It's like you guys always play with lore, like the coconut cake and like these kind of worn tales about celebrities. I like that you're creating lore for Deborah.
Well, yeah, and I think the truth is these are not harmless pranks. I think that Ava names them that because there is the Hollywood lore, and it's a way to be like, don't worry, this isn't actually an insane move to try and get me fired. But the truth is that as funny as they are, I think to the viewer, these are maneuvers to get her out. She's doing something that's going to be very like sexually aggressive to her now boss, and Ava blames it on the George Clooney of it all. But, I think in fact, it's really much more serious for Deborah. She wants her fired.
Well, that's how we get to like the HR of it all, where we're kind of in an HR session.
Is there an age limit on sexual favors in the workplace, or do senior citizens get a pass because it's like good for them?
Maybe she could email her disgusting questions and let the rest of us get back to our day. I have a press conference to get to.
Well, actually, I do have to keep you all here for the entirety of the Q&A in case there's anything relevant. And to answer your question, no, there is no pass on sexual favors.
Thanks, Stace.
We have heard so many stories from people who worked at various late night shows, and also Jen worked in late night, of like just the most crazy interpersonal dynamics that you just like you have a front seat to. And I think that was kind of the inspiration, especially for the HR scene, is to be like, yeah, the craziest shit happens, and you're just kind of like, that's what these jobs can be sometimes. They're just like insane personalities, and you just have to be like, okay. And like people let celebrities get away with so much. I guess because they're famous or whatever. So I think for us, like the HR scene is like a great example, like a way to have them play their game in a new world, which is like this backdrop of the like office HR world, which they've never been in before. So it's like, yeah, what if Deborah and Ava took their love-hate and we put it in an office backdrop, and then specifically in HR where we meet Michaela Watkins' character.
And my impulse is to say that's perfect casting for Michaela Watkins, but I feel like anything Michaela Watkins is in is perfect casting. Like what was the process of casting her? How did you decide on her?
That was actually a really difficult role to cast. And we are all fans of Michaela. She is so funny. And she actually read for it and just brought a dynamic to the role that was just perfect. And a lot of people read for that part, a lot of very funny, very talented people. But that was a tricky one because we wanted the character to be just irritating enough that you could also enjoy, the fun and games of the character. But Michaela's really talented actress as well as a comedian. And so she really fits in, I think, with the tone of Hacks so well because she can do things in a way that is super funny and super hard funny, but doesn't feel too broad. It still feels very well observed because, and she, if you should get her on the pod, she'll tell you that she, based the character on people that she knew. And so to her, she was channeling, actual people and wasn't ever doing something that was so, cartoonish.
After the HR sequence, Deborah goes to a press conference because the network needs to sell her to the public, and it doesn't go well.
Deborah, are you worried about the physical toll that producing and hosting 5 new shows a week will take on your body, given your age?
Stamina has never been an issue for me. Is it for you?
Well, as a woman...
No. Let me stop you right there. How about you not think of me as a woman, okay? I'm not a woman. I'm a comedian. Got it?
What was the conversation in the writers' room about this scene? Like, how did you toe the line between going a little too extreme and the kind of middle ground where she ended up in the final cut?
Well, because she is so irritated with Ava and this power grab, she is already very raw. And I think it's not unlikely for someone like Deborah to be a little bit saucy and to be a little bit direct when she's asked a question that she might not appreciate. So it already felt very true to this character, but then also given the intense pressure of the situation and the tension between she and Ava, it just made a lot of sense that she wouldn't be her most well-behaved, media-trained self, because quite frankly, she is probably someone who has made colorful remarks in the press before and not really cared. And so in this scenario, it just felt like a perfect storm for her of, questions that would be a little bit irritating, but also her being her guard's a little bit down. She's worn a little thin because she's up all night thinking about how to get Ava back. She's not sleeping
not
until
really focused on the show.
Right.
Yeah,
She's been collecting old.
She's focused on exactly.
Right. She also is somebody who is people like her comedy because she doesn't have a filter, and that's what's so appealing about I think Deborah Vance's comedy. LOL, I'm like the fictional fans, but that is so. Therefore, it's like she's not media trained. She actually isn't going to be, and so I think that's innately an interesting part of why we wanted to do this season of her being a late night host is somebody who has never had to play by the rules, getting a job where you do have to play by the rules. And so what happens when you ask Deborah Vance to do these things? Will she lick the boot or is she going to kind of do it her own way? And that's part of what we like to play with this season.
I am interested in what you were talking about, her going to this late night scenario where she is she needs to be her most traditional self all of a sudden, even though, what is mentioned by this New York Times Magazine feature where it's she was doing that and then this girlie came along and taught her to do more confessional comedy. It worked so well. It brought her back. But now she's kind of saying, well, that's not what this show is about. I'm actually going to go back to what I was before, even though that's what kind of took me out of the game and it's not relevant. So I like the kind of the Tonight Show, whoever the host of the Tonight Show is, that type of traditional, very family friendly vibe that she's now trying to lean into, even though that's kind of not where she's coming from in terms of her most recent successes as a comedian.
Exactly. And I think that kind of is true. We hope we're exploring a true phenomenon in Hollywood, which is that a lot of times someone pops off and becomes everyone loves them and for doing one specific thing. And then when they're put on a bigger platform, a broader platform, they're asked to do things or put in roles that aren't them. And so it's how do you have commercial mass success while staying true to your voice and yourself?
Which is a thing people love about you.
Yes.
Yeah, it's she thought she could have it both ways until that very moment at the press conference.
Exactly.
And everything came crumbling down.
Yeah.
A lot of the journalists in the press conference were apparently real journalists.
Yes.
When you have an ask like that to a real person playing themselves, like a non-professional actor, are they usually into it? Or are people kind of nervous? Was that exciting for the people who were cast in the show? Do you even know the answer to that?
I think that they enjoyed it. I mean, for us, because we're portraying parts of the industry and we want to realistically, it felt like a no-brainer to say, okay, well, why don't we ask some journalists to play journalists? And so I think in that way, they may have been nervous, but they didn't seem nervous. Because they were doing what they do every day. I think they're used to being in a press conference and asking questions. And in fact, sometimes had input as to how they would phrase a question, which was great.
They look at the card, they're like, women are not funny? That's what you want me to be saying?
Well, okay, so that actor was the only actor and only non-journalist, because that is hard to make a journalist do that.
I think if you gave me that, I'd be so excited to be on Hacks, and I'd be like, I am not asking this.
Well, what's funny about that is you'd be like, that people don't ask that anymore. But we just did press, and we just got that question 10, because Jen and I, for one day, did a lot of press solo, and then truly, how many times were we
got we got asked it a bunch,
wow.
And
about if women were funny,
not as blunt as are women funny, but not so far off. Questions about what is it like to be a woman? What is it like to, it's just a lot of those questions that have been asked now.
And they never ask me that. And it's not fair.
But it is like, it's strange. It feels, and we do genuinely feel the way Deborah feels when she responds, "Don't think of me as a woman. I'm a comedian." Like I really, of all the things we worry about day to day to day on making this show, it's not that I'm also a woman.
No, you're like, God, as a woman today, what will my
Yeah.
pitches be?
Exactly. Or like, as a woman, what song is best for the end? Like,
Yeah,
it's just,
so
it's,
silly.
and Lucia and I have talked about this, and we are really lucky in that, baked into the thesis of this show is Ava stands on the shoulders of women like Deborah, who encountered far worse behavior because they were women in that industry. And so Lucia and I have heard many stories of people who have had women who have had much more difficult experiences than we have had. And so we are so grateful to them, and we are reverential,
Yeah.
to them, but also the day-to-day work is so intense, and we are just trying to do our jobs and make our, for lack of better terms, art, that like it just doesn't, you don't think about it. So then when someone asks you in press about it, you're like, oh, I don't know, irrelevant. It's like it's strange.
Do you think Deborah is, I mean, just to speak for the character, do you think Deborah is more triggered by questions about her age or questions about her gender?
Age.
Age.
I think.
For sure.
Because I think also Deborah, it's interesting, Deborah is, yeah, I think age.
I think age, because she, and in the work with Ava, has of course explored her past in this industry of being a woman and what that has meant, and the discrimination she's faced. She is aware and willing to go there. She is not willing to say her real age.
Right.
She's not in Vegas anymore. She's in Los Angeles. Is there any part of you that misses that? Or is there an excitement to like writing in a new city, like for real this time? Like, do you miss it like Deborah misses it?
Well, we have a real fondness for Vegas, and it's really, and that's the thing. You can take the girl out of Vegas, but you can't take the Vegas out of the girl. And so you do see a lot of, I think you still see a lot of Vegas, and we do try and also incorporate our Vegas ensemble in the show. I feel like we it's exciting to us to be in a new city and explore the city and be able to, unpack certain things about the city of Los Angeles. But, just like Deborah, I think this will always be a Vegas show at heart. So
yeah, we the show is about two women on the fringes of the industry. And so I think for us, this season was both an exciting and scary challenge of them now being firmly back in the industry at this high point. And it is it's a show about the industry, sure, but it's not an industry show. It's a show about the relationship between these two women. And so I think to be more in LA and be more industry focused was both fun and also a challenge, because you want to say something unique and new that hasn't been said before about this town.
I was gonna move on to the whole deal with Marcus. And to me, Marcus really does represent Vegas and the kind of like fandom, Deborah's fandom, like her true like gay guys who love her, who she's kind of leaving behind a little.
Listen, you hosting isn't just a conflict with QVC. It also means there's less of a place for me in the company.
You went behind my back.
Whoa. Behind your back, I did this for you. And by the way, I made you a lot of money. Do you even want to know how much I sold it for?
I don't care about the money. It's about loyalty.
Deborah, I have been loyal to you for 22 years. You can't even commit to a damn lunch. Don't you think I deserve better than that?
Her move from kind of the Vegas of it all to LA, also moving away from that fandom, from Marcus, from the QVC of it all. Is this something that you guys have been talking about? Is this kind of like her jump to late night, kind of representing that?
Yeah, exactly.
When we started dealing with it a little bit last season, when he is at Palm Springs Pride and Deborah isn't even able to come, again, because she's in pursuit of this job. And I think, that was a really important episode, I think, for Marcus, because he had that great conversation with Tim Bagley about what it's like to be a fan and what it's like to share the person that you're a fan of with the world when they get bigger, because it happens to everybody. And we have been, like, I think, laying the groundwork for this, but of course it comes at a very bad time because she's just been betrayed by Ava. Now Marcus is leaving her. It's very triggering because when she got her chance at a late night show in the 70s, the famous trauma of her husband sleeping with her sister happened. So she's like, why does this always happen that I get something good and then people turn and people leave me? So she does not handle it well.
Because he's her fan, he's like, no, you need to take your full attention to this because it's an amazing opportunity and I want you to succeed. And I would just be a distraction. So it's, I think, yeah, Marcus is, you're totally right, like a symbol of like Vegas and these other things that she had to do. And I think because he loves her so much, he's like, I will willingly step back so that you have the time and the space to be the best Deborah Vance you can be. And it's such a beautiful moment. And I don't know if Deborah even realizes how selfless it is and what a beautiful thing it is for Marcus to do. And I think Carl does such an incredible job in those scenes, really trying to get through to her and being, it's like hard when somebody's mad at you for being selfless for them. It's like, are you kidding me?
So after the scene, Deborah has to go to the big network party at Tony Goldwyn's house, Bob Lipka, excuse me. They have an encounter and she has a fight with Ava. Can you talk about shooting like a big party scene?
Yeah, I mean, that was like such a crazy night of shooting because there was so much to shoot. And that was all one night, right? Which is insane. And it was, like it was a lot of like running over here, going over there, running over here, people saying this, like, yet also like having to have like really intense performances. And so it was like a very crazy night of shooting, but everybody was so on it. And I think that that's actually, it's one of, I think, my favorite things that we shot, honestly, this season is that night scene because there's so much at play. There's like there's the Bob Lipka, Deborah encounter in the bathroom, which is like sexy and scary, which is obviously.
You're not quite sure what's going to happen.
Yeah, you are kind of not sure at all what's going to happen.
Yeah. And
I'm still not. I watch it and I'm like, what's going to happen?
And then, of course, Deborah in a porta potty, which is iconic, obviously. And I think it's the showdown where Deborah realizes that Ava is fucking serious, especially when she sends that email to Mina Elahi.
You think I'm fucking kidding? I already have this email drafted to Mina Elahi, my friend at the New Yorker. You get me fired, I send it. So say it. Say I won.
You're being ridiculous.
Okay, I'll send it right now.
No! Are you crazy?
You seem upset. You want one more chance? I unsent it.
You can't unsend an email.
You can't. You still use Hotmail. Say that I won, or I'll send it for real. Say it.
Okay, you won.
What?
You won!
It's definitely the first time I think we ever see Deborah being so fucking sub and being like, okay. Yes, you win. Like for her to say out loud that somebody else won is insane. And so for us, I think that that's like such a fun thing to get to play and do. And then Cece Homo and Winnie Landell, two epic names, both come over with the new plan, which is you're both going to be on the cover of the New York Times Magazine, my cover girls.
Yeah, I really liked that kind of how they were like, because this is so media specific and something that we both have experienced in, where it's like we're shifting the narrative. We found out you have a female head writer and now it's all about your relationship, and that is so slay. And like that is exactly like that, but that is
how it
like,
happens.
That is how it happens, and like that does sell magazines. That is an interesting story and it is relevant. And like as much as like Deborah's up there being like I'm a comedian first and a woman second, like what is the kind of shtick of the show, which will get people to watch it, is that fact. Like, and you can't deny that. So it kind of brings them together once again, but it's all in service of getting people to watch the show, which Deborah can't deny is the goal that has in front of her.
Yeah. And, Winnie Landell says it hits young and old. It's female without being too female. It is a good way to, I think, refute some of the stuff that Deborah said in the press conference. And yeah, I think it's just we think very funny because it's right on the heels of Jimmy saying you're going to stay away from each other. The way that we're going to make this work is to keep you two apart.
And the LA of it all kind of ends this episode with, I think, kind of like the final punctuation of like this season is Los Angeles, because it begins with both of them in full glam pretending. You know,
Yeah.
pretending to like each other in front of the cameras. And that is, I think, like one of the most like LA images imaginable to me. Great way to end it. Like, great way to say that we're in LA now and they're going to have to sort of bury the hatchet as best as they can,
Fake it till
knowing
you make
Ava
it
and Deborah.
vibes.
Yeah, make it till you make it.
And I think it's the
Exactly.
most chilling moment of the episode for Deborah because Ava fakes it so well. She says, you know, I'll never speak to you again. And Ava says, good. And then instantly smiles and presses her cheek.
Cheek to cheek.
Yeah. And it's like, I think for Deborah, she's like, oh, shit.
Yeah, because she's also just admitted you broke my heart, which is a moment of vulnerability for her. And Ava does not flinch, even though, and this is so brilliantly directed by Lucia, the way it's framed, we to camera do see that Ava has a moment where hearing you broke my heart, because she's told Jimmy earlier in the episode she doesn't have a heart, does affect her and does like hit her hard. And then she doubles down.
You can't handle that you have to share credit with me. I know you were mad about the cover.
You're right. But what actually bothers me about that cover is that you should not be on it because you're not the right person for the job.
You offered it to me.
I know I did. That's before I realized how many eyeballs would be on it.
What does that mean?
That article only confirmed for me I never should have offered you that position in the first place.
Okay, we're back and we're talking about episode 2. It's called Cover Girls and it's written by Samantha Riley and directed by Lucia. We are thrust into this second episode with the New York Times cover coming out. And of course, they're immediately arguing about it outside a comedy club and going viral. As you're watching them fight in front of the comedy club, you're like, there is no way someone isn't filming this. There is no way. Like, she's famous. She's like Fallon. Like, people would see her at a comedy club, know her within the context of comedy, and immediately pull out their phone.
Well, I got completely played because I was watching with my husband and I turned to him. I was like, this would have been recorded. This is ridiculous. Like, someone would have seen this. And then the moment the camera turns, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Is this something where you guys were like wanting to have this moment go viral to kind of threaten, to have them be more on their toes? Like, they're kind of not aware. It's kind of amazing they're not aware that this could happen.
Exactly. It's really like a metaphor for the new stage that they now have, the new, like, all the eyes on them.
Can't just
and so
fight in public. Yeah.
Exactly. And so they're not thinking about that. They're so involved in arguing with each other that they're not seeing the bigger picture, which is we are public figures now. And so for us, it's kind of like, it's a metaphor for, like, they are so involved in their own bullshit with each other that they don't see, like, how public facing they are.
Yeah. And it's emblematic of what this episode is about, which is them missing the forest for the trees, them like concentrating on their personal squabbling and missing the bigger picture of they really need to move forward and get this show going because they are on the air soon, as Winnie Lindell reminds them at the end.
Right. And that's kind of how you get back to that viral moment, is to set up this conversation at the end. But I would think the main thing of this episode is that coyote, like this, you guys are not often doing kind of a symbolism like this in such a direct way. It's giving dream book. I'm thinking about like,
when you have and the ducks.
Yeah, the ducks.
It's giving Sopranos and the
Totally.
Ducks. I love that.
So, but the coyote is a very, I would say, LA kind of Sopranos and the Ducks. How did the coyote come in? Did you guys present that to the room? Was that just put on the table? Let's work around this. How'd that come about?
Well, the three of us were working because the three of us are in person and then we Zoom with our room for the most part. We meet in person periodically, but not all the time. And where Lucia and I live in Los Angeles, we have a view to our yard, which is invaded by coyotes a lot. And so as we were writing, we were seeing coyotes. I would often leave the room to kind of like haze them and chase them because we do have a delicious toddler. But
and Paul has, tell them about your horn.
I have an air horn for it. I'm like, I'm constantly honking at coyotes to be like, please go to other yards. You know what I mean? Because we actually had a litter of them born pretty much in our backyard.
Oh,
we had like a lot of coyotes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it is cute and sweet unless you have a tiny, delicious child.
Yeah.
Then you're scared.
Or a small dog, of course. You know.
Of course. And to the dog lovers, I'm so sorry I ignored you and I didn't think about you. I did not center you in my story.
Just promise to do better.
I'm thinking about the harnesses they put on little dogs. Now I'm thinking about them on your child, like your child wearing a little vest with the big spikes on it, kind of. That would be so
You
good.
better believe I would buy that. If that existed, I would be buying that.
It's bad for a play date. But we just wanted to sort of, I think, represent a lot of the antagonists that Deborah feels are closing in, whether that be the network or Ava or just the challenges of living in LA. Again, she hasn't yet resolved things with Marcus. So there are a lot of vipers. And so the coyote did feel like a very fitting antagonist because she now is also in Los Angeles and dealing with them in her own yard.
And we would have done vipers. We would have done snakes, but it's harder to wrangle.
Yeah. Harder to they're less theatrical.
Right.
Because they don't have legs.
Well, because we actually did have real coyotes. Those are
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's what we were going to ask.
Coy
Those are
dogs.
real coyotes.
No, they're coyote dogs.
They're coyote
Yes,
dogs.
but so they're like they're mixed breed, so they are somewhat dogs. Again, to the dog community, I'm
Jen
so
should
sorry.
speak
I'm
to
not
this.
Yeah,
censoring
you just
you.
said you'd do better.
Yeah.
This is what you're
Cut this out.
hearing is that I am like a dog lover, and Lucia is, and she's
A dog liker.
a dog.
I wouldn't even say that.
Wow.
I would say
Oh,
I'm a dog. I would say I'm
Redacted.
afraid of dogs.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
fully afraid of
Yes.
dogs, and that's
fine, and there's
fine.
no right or wrong, but
It's
it
just-
is funny to when you have to talk about dogs.
Well, whenever we're like, hey, they have like questions about like the trainers and the dogs. They're like, what's it? I'm like, Jen.
yeah,
Jen?
yeah.
Not
The-
that
What's funny is you bring up dogs, like the coyote is a coyote dog, right? But then there's like so many other dogs in this episode, right? Like there's the dogs in the office too.
Taking a
Like
shit everywhere. Yeah.
this episode is full of dogs and dog
Jimmy,
shit.
Oh.
dogs and dog shit. Yeah, you're right. Kayla is cornering the market on animals and children. She's the queen of petite.
I told you my business plan. We both need our thing. You've cornered the market on women of a certain age and lesbian writers. I'm going to corner the market on animals and children. I'm the queen of petite.
I love that Kayla's like back with a vengeance in terms of like how she is the perfect kind of like, you always think she's going to do something that's a fuck up, but then she saves the day. Like, and that is just kind of like,
Absolutely.
it is always satisfying no matter how it works, even if you know it's coming, even if you're like, even if you know exactly that it's going to be totally fine, you're like, it's such a satisfying round circle. So it's like, you guys are dealing with dog coyotes and dogs. So you've had more animal wranglers in this episode than maybe ever that you've ever had.
And actually, weirdly, the Lusac and Schaefer and Lusac scene where we have all the dogs and children was actually one of the most easy to shoot in terms of the training because
You're like,
well, there were a lot of them and they were just in the room.
Yes.
For the coyotes, we had to no one could speak on set.
Oof.
Everyone
that's
had to
true.
be silent. It was very they can be triggered easily. Everyone lie down, close your eyes, cover yourself in a blanket, and we're gonna shoot.
remember you weren't allowed to bring pizza within like 100 yards?
I had gotten pizza, RIP to Side Pie, because it was one of the businesses we lost in the fires in Altadena. I had gotten Side Pie. I couldn't bring it to set. And then guess what? Not surprised. Somebody from crew ate it. They ate the whole pizza.
The whole
Because I
pizza?
had to leave it behind.
You had to leave it
The
at
whole pizza.
You can't just leave a
Bobby.
pizza
the
at
whole
Crafty.
pizza.
Well, they refrigerate. They're supposed to.
I asked, whatever. It does not matter.
I
It's
think
not about the
people
pizza.
wanna know.
I asked for it to be thrown in a fridge or whatever. I said, "Can I leave this here? Like, can I keep this here?" I was told yes. I think that was interpreted as, "Can I leave this here for anyone to have?" And that's why the yes was so enthusiastic and quick. Yes. And so I went to set, covered myself in a blanket, was silent. The coyote did its job. I went back for the pizza when we wrapped very, very late. No pizza to be found.
And then as we're walking away from set, the like coyote van is like on set basically, and it wasn't your pizza, I don't think, but we saw the owners eating pizza mere inches from the coyotes, a different pizza.
You were like, wow.
And we're like, I thought we were not supposed to have food near them, and there's scarf in it. And love to them, by the way.
They did. I mean, it was excellent. Those coyotes. I mean,
They look scary.
still.
They were giving
They were scary.
Did a coyote actually lick Gene Smart's face?
No,
No.
It licked a person in a green bodysuit.
Oh, wow.
No.
And then Gene went in.
and then we put Gene in after.
And then we put Gene in after.
Wait,
we did.
Wow.
We,
The
can't,
magic
we
of
couldn't risk
television.
Gene Smart's face being eaten by a coyote. Anyway,
Green screening Gene in is like so fun. That's so usually only get that on like Mission Impossible, but like that's amazing.
So we go back to the office this episode, and I, wanted to hoot and holler when I saw that Polly Draper was back as Diana, the psychic.
The blue aura. Oh my God.
That's me.
You had the purest aura I've ever seen.
That is nice. I don't know. I feel like I was.
You don't have it anymore.
I do.
No. No, I'm getting something really rancid right now.
Isn't that so fun?
Just
so funny.
Just a perfect woman. I don't even want to say perfect character, perfect, like just a perfect woman. Everything about her specific aura is pure perfection.
Yeah.
Where did this idea come from? Is this like ripped from real life, like having a psychic, like in the world of like a creative
Well,
space?
as Deborah says, emperors, kings, presidents all rely on psychics.
Like Reagan, yeah.
Have for millennia.
Okay, Bobby, you're hitting on something, and it's a spoiler for our lives. We're obsessed with this Reagan story.
Yes.
Was it a big Nancy Reagan thing? She was really into that
Nancy
stuff?
Reagan had a medium, Joan Quigley, who ran the White House.
Air Force One would not leave the ground unless it was the time that Joan Quigley, her Nancy's psychic, had designated.
432, you know?
Wow.
Yeah.
We also want to talk about, I think, another bit of casting, not a return, but a new person, was Robbie Hoffman as Randy.
Mm-hmm.
How did that happen? Because that is a perfect, like, character to actor matchup.
Where were you before this? One of the agencies, or?
Oh, no, me. I never been nowhere. Last week, I was a Hasidic Lubavitch Jew living in Crown Heights, New York. Now I'm in LA. I'm gay and probably an atheist. Till last week, I never even seen a movie.
Huh.
Have you seen Speed?
Yeah.
Is that a movie? Sandra Bullock?
Oh, yeah.
We really should sign Sandra Bullock.
We did write with Robbie Hoffman in mind because we find Robbie so funny. Obviously, we then auditioned people because we could have dialed up or down certain aspects of the character. But Robbie just felt like a great ingredient to introduce to the Jimmy Kayla dynamic.
Right.
Because she is so funny.
Yeah.
Can I tell you one story about when I called Robbie to tell her about this audition?
Yes.
So I called Robbie and I'm like, hey, Robbie, we would like you to audition for this part, that this part version of it would be based on you, or like kind of maybe audition some other people to be different versions of it. She goes, name names.
But the essence of the character was someone who was totally untethered to the entertainment industry, a complete outsider who Kayla did find and thought would be perfect and somehow did work.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of those out-of-the-box ideas that Kayla has that does end up working perfectly. And also, we think it's really funny for Jimmy. Jimmy being put upon is a very funny dynamic. And so him then having to grapple with the idea of someone who was a hospital administrator, being at the office, just was funny. So whether that was someone who had a similar story to Robbie's or someone who was formerly Amish, we were like, we'll figure out a way to make that work. So
I feel like you guys are always playing with the institution where it's like Jimmy is so part of the institution. His father did it. It's like these are the ways that things can go, but then you surround them by people who fully have no idea what they're doing, but then somehow succeed, and it like drives you absolutely insane. And I think that always is like on your show in different levels. People are always getting annoyed by that. It's so funny to watch, honestly.
Was Speed always the movie? Or was there another option?
I don't
think there was another
being
option.
another one.
The way Robbie says Sandra Bullock
Speed.
is actually extremely funny, and I feel like once you hit that, it's like that's the movie. It's got to be it.
I mean,
we love Sandra.
We already touched on the Comedy Store scene, so we can skip ahead to the final moment between Ava and Deborah and Winnie. The face-off.
I don't think either of you understand. Late nights in trouble.
No, we've read the trades.
Oh, it's way worse than that. In the end, it wasn't a choice between you and someone else to host. It was a choice between you and no one.
I love this scene because it's another great moment that I think happens so often in this series where, as someone who's watching it and sort of like maybe watching too closely, where they're like, well, how would this happen in real life, right? Like, how would this actually go down if a Comedy Store blowout was filmed and went like vaguely viral online? And at the end, that scene with Winnie, played by Helen Hunt, amazing. Love to see her on my small screen all the time. Everything comes back, like their misbehavior comes back, the pranks come back, and it's a great moment. Do you want to talk about like how that scene originated? Was that always like that's where this episode was always going?
It was always going to that. It was always going to missing, like Paul said, missing the forest for the trees, and somebody calling them out. And I'd be like, get real. This is serious, and you need to buckle down and get rid of your bullshit, because you've got and also an opportunity to bring in the stakes, which is this show is almost canceled. It's also a nod to the idea of the glass cliff, which is the idea that like as institutions are failing or as businesses are failing, they'll say, okay, well, why don't we hand the reins to a woman who will then inevitably fail, and we can just blame it on her. But you know the institution of late night in Winnie's eyes is not doing well, and that's part of why they hired Deborah, is because she can be a workhorse, and maybe this is a wild idea to turn the whole thing around.
But yeah, it takes someone like Winnie, who is now Deborah's boss, right? She has someone to answer to who never has in her life, to say, you think getting the job was hard? Well, the mission of this season, which is launching the show and having it succeed, is way harder. It's the only thing that will make both Deborah and Ava like snap out of it a bit and agree to disagree and make a truce happen.
The episode ends with Deborah shipping Ava off to Las Vegas while she's dressed like Adam Sandler. And then we're going back to Vegas next episode. Can't wait. But thank you, Paul, Lucia, and Jen, for joining us on the podcast today
so
and
much.
for giving us the reins to your precious
Thanks for
child.
the gig. We will do you proud, we promise.
See you soon.
Ciao for now.
Before we end the episode, we have one very special guest here with us. It's Samantha Riley, who wrote the second episode, Cover Girls. Hi, Samantha. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks.
So you've been writing for the show since season 1.
How'd you know that?
It's in the notes.
Oh, God.
It's in your IMDb.
Oh, God. I got locked out of my account a long time ago.
But since you've been here since the beginning, you've sort of witnessed the show transform firsthand. What would you say to viewers who have only seen these first 2 episodes, like day 1 in the writer's room for season 4? What is kind of the theme of this season?
This season on Hacks.
Yes. Sell it.
I feel that it is, and this is something we talked about a lot, it's sort of about Ava trying on a new identity to see if she can play Deborah's game a little bit, to see if she is like a big bad girl or whatever. And it is Deborah sort of reckoning with a version of herself, a monster she's created, if you will.
Yeah.
Exactly.
She's Frankenstein dealing with her monster at this point.
Yeah,
for sure.
totally. Her monster's her number 1 employee. Could you imagine?
I mean, what else would you want, though, honestly? Like, they're going to do a good job.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
The whole show revolves around their relationship, whether they're at odds or whether they're not. And you're starting off this season with them incredibly at odds. And episode 2, I feel like you start backing away from like the meanest version of they are to each other, because they simply can't be that mean to each other the whole season.
Yes, that's true. I think the challenge is, because they've been pulled apart and come together so many times at this point. How do you make that feel new? And how do you convey to the audience that this is like worse than ever? Like their fight is not, this is worse than like when Deborah sued Ava. You know what I mean? There hasn't been an apology or like there hasn't been an agreement on anything. They're just like, yeah, we hate each other, but we're going to work together. And that hasn't really been the case before, where they both are completely standing their ground, but are agreeing to work together without saying the other person's right.
But it's the thing that kind of they begrudgingly have the most in common in a way, where it's like they are steadfast in their aspirations and their dreams. And it's like, I will get what I want against all odds. I will get what I want, even if I have to deal with this woman that I hate. Both of them are thinking that at the exact same time. And they're refusing to acknowledge their similarities constantly. Like we're in the 4th season of them refusing to recognize how similar they are.
Totally.
And I think like something special about the show is that tension really does sustain itself.
Totally.
Episode by episode by episode.
Yes.
I did find it absolutely delightful that you wrote in I don't want to give a top 5 things about LA, but among the top 5 things in LA is the Americana Mall, because Lindsay took me there when she lived there, took me there every time since.
1 year I lasted.
I am obsessed with the apartments at the Americana Mall. And I was like, how is this show in the first 2 episodes making me sort of get a little electrified by LA? I'm like, oh, you're giving me everything I love about this city, meaning the Americana Mall. How did you decide like what elements of Los Angeles to put in the show? Like you're giving us inside jokes about Los Angeles that you just don't see elsewhere, like the Americana Mall.
The Americana, it looms large on the minds of a lot of East Siders, I think, in LA. Like, it's just so strange that there are apartments there, like, that are getting the, like, Frank Sinatra, like, ambient music that is constantly playing there. I mean, it's very New York in a way. You look out the window, there's a little choo-choo train going in circles. It's basically a microcosm.
Public transportation. We can take the tram from
The
Jersey
Starbucks
Mike
to the Cheesecake
to
Factory.
the Cheesecake Factory.
And you can go to the movies. I mean, it really, it's so funny. But like, I do think the idea that people live in those apartments, that comes into your mind when you,
all the
that
time,
just arrives in your
constantly.
mind when you live here. You're like,
Who hasn't Googled
lives
how
there?
much the rents are, which are
They are
it is
expensive.
very expensive there. I guess also what I liked about it is that you're not shoehorning in this Americana reference. It's a perfect Kayla thing where she presents this kind of like at first very silly idea that actually when you think about it a little bit harder is quite helpful. Like,
yes, I mean, I feel like all the Kayla storylines involve like that is the worst idea in the world and you just completely fix the problem. She's true idiot savant or whatever. She's just
idiot,
like,
that's it. It's literally that. Yeah.
yeah.
I thought that the scene with Winnie, Helen Hunt's character, at the end of the second episode, I thought was really surprising because it sort of directly, it almost like accosts you, because you spend the entire episode thinking, oh, wow, they're going to make it work. This is all happening like this sort of fantasy land of late night. Oh, you have an older woman hosting what might be the most popular late night show on television. That doesn't happen in real life. And then suddenly at the end of the episode, real life sort of slams into both of them. What was that like writing it? Because it seems like in a way it could have felt pretty alarming and scary to write something that's so real about your own industry.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, we wanted it to feel like they're at the principal's office. I think that was like
Mhm.
literally in the outline, that they're getting in trouble. And actually, this goes back to your earlier question, because like, how do we keep them at odds and then bring them together again and stuff? Like, I think this sort of the way that we can maintain their fight in this episode while also having them work together is for Winnie, for like their mom, their principal, the boss, to be like, whatever's going on between you two, it's bullshit and it doesn't matter because there's such a bigger problem. Your thing with each other, that's petty and boring and a distraction from the actual problem, which is getting good ratings. It's also interesting to have someone say that to two people who are so obsessed with work, whose entire lives are obsessed with work, you know? Because they are. They like don't even realize that they're not working hard. Like, it's actually pretty strange for them to like not get back to marketing or whatever, you know, because they are such hard workers. Like, that is what they've bonded over in so many ways in previous seasons. So yeah, it's scary to have someone be like, the thing that you've wrapped your whole identity around, you're not doing that. Go back to that, you know?
Yeah.
Thank you, Sam, so much for joining us for this episode. We're looking forward to the rest of the season, and I'm sure the listeners are too.
Yes, thank you guys.
See you at the Americana.
Oh, I can't wait. Yes.
And that's it. This has been the official Hacks podcast. We'll be back next week to dig into episode 3, What Happens in Vegas. I'm your host, Bobby Finger.
And I'm Lindsey Weber.
This podcast is a production of Max and Odyssey's Pineapple Street Studios. Our executive producers are Gabrielle Lewis, Barry Finkel, and Jayanne Barry.
Our producers are Melissa Akiko Slaughter and Ben Goldberg. Our associate producer is Natalie Pert. Darby Maloney is our editor.
This episode was mixed by Hannes Brown. Pineapple's head of sound and engineering is Raj Makija. And Pineapple's senior audio engineers are Marina Pais and Pedro Alvira. This episode was engineered by Javier Cruces.
Special thanks to Kenya Reyes, Allison Cohen-Surokach, Aaron Kelly, and Becky Rowe. Production music is courtesy of Max. You can watch new and old episodes of Hacks on Max. Big special thanks to Paul, Lucia, Jen, and Samantha for joining us today on the show. See you later.
If I'm not the greatest assistant you both ever had, you send me on the bus packing. Man, I can't stop thinking about Speed.